Hello, everyone.
Is being recorded.
Okay, hang on.
Okay, hang on.
Let me admit a couple of more. Uh, Welcome to Art 1.2, which is most of you know now. Let's do the speaker view for the time being, and then we'll probably do the broader view later. Just a couple of introductory comments, and I know we'll have people continue to join us as they log in. I'll admit them, of course. I usually, so you'll know, I usually wait till 3:02 or 3:03 because quite a few people log in right at about 3:01. So that way is less interruption. So if you don't get, me on the screen at right at 3, don't panic. It's not that I'm, obviously I sent you an invitation and you got all 30 of you got the so far the Zoom info, but starting in the next class, I'll be just sending you the link, which is faster, right? I just want to make sure everybody actually had the number, the hard, right, Zoom info login number. Okay, so I hope you guys all had a great summer. I heard it was going to be 100 degrees or 98 in Santa Rosa. Anybody care to comment? I'm in Berkeley. That's where I live, and I drive up there every Wednesday to teach in-person classes. I've been doing that for 25 years by way of introduction. Obviously, I must like the job teaching at Santa Rosa JC, which I do because the students come from such great variety of backgrounds and life experiences, and that adds to the educational experience for everyone, including me. So here's my first, I hope, positive bit of info for you all. I don't mute my students. You can mute yourself, but I encourage questions or comments or participation as long as they're relevant to the subject and they don't take us too far off track in terms of timing. If it gets to where, there's a certain topic that is, brought up by, and you can do chat, right? Or obviously on Zoom or live, raise your hand, whatever. I will usually respond right then, but sometimes we get, behind a bit and I might have to wait till toward the end of the class. I do record my classes because obviously each week there are certain students who can't make into the class. Speaking of which, let's admit the rest of these people here. Welcome. Yeah, we just got started I'm saying that my classes, all my lectures are on YouTube. I have my own channel, and I'll even send you an email to remind you every Friday by 8 p.m. at the latest, usually earlier on Friday, I post that week's lectures under Mark Wilson's SRJC Art History Lectures, and then by title, the title of that lecture or that topic. So if you missed the class or want to go back and review to see it, part of it again, of course, you can fast forward through whatever you don't want to listen to. So it's a nice feature, and YouTube is great. It's worked very well. So you as a backup. Okay, and then a couple other things. I don't use Canvas. It's too cumbersome, at least for my particular purposes. And I do therefore require your papers for any online class like this one to be submitted to me directly. And then I parcel them out with some of the readers that I've had, experienced readers. I don't hire novices, people who've already taken my classes, one or two or so, and gotten A's and know how to write papers and take exams. And I give them a little training background. This is not in my pocket. This is not covered by the college. You used to have a fee for that, or sorry, I meant a fund for adjuncts. That means teachers who teach less than full time, which is what I am. Most of the JC is adjunct in every department. That doesn't make us less teachers. It just means there are not enough positions for full time for everybody. So I'm happy with that. I'm not at all second guessing that. The point is there is no fee or fund, I'm sorry, I keep saying fee, that we can tap to hire readers in the college. So I do hire readers from former students, and quite a few of them have gone on to 4-year and even graduate programs with letters of recommendation, glowing ones from me, of course, like any professor who you may have need of. I will always be available if you got an A in my class, of course, to do that. Okay, I don't know if it's enabled and it's simple, let's do it that way. Boy, I hope so, because no one's, believe it or not, this is my 4th semester of teaching Zoom and I've never had that question. I hope that's okay. Yeah, there we go. Wow, learned something new. No surprise. My daughter keeps saying, she's 19 and she, by the way, is a student at the JC this semester only online, but she took my in-person classes, and no, I did not grade her papers. I totally gave them to readers who did not know her, graded them objectively, as I do with any student's papers that I don't grade. But I grade at least one of your assignments, and usually more for each student each semester, so you can count on my input. And I don't just look at the bottom line on the readers' grades. When they assign any student of mine a grade, I double check that they did it correctly, and if need be, I'll adjust that score. So you can count on my input. It's not like I just full-time, at least when I was at Berkeley, the professors never graded their students' papers, but I do as many as I can and double check any readers' work. Okay, so I don't use Canvas. So don't look for me there. Don't submit your papers there. You submit them to me directly. And here's my best suggestion for this. I know Campus email, it goes to Outlook, and I, of course, use it. And you can submit your papers there. Obviously, you have to be able to because it's the official website, but it is I've heard this from a lot of professors and at least some former students. It is so cumbersome, and other people, not teachers even, who have company requirements that they use Outlook. It's cumbersome. It's hard to explain, but it's much less efficient than, now some of you will laugh, my own personal email, which is a safer, more rapid, and more reliable way to submit your assignments. So you can do either. The campus email you have and my email at the top of the syllabus. We'll go over that in a few minutes. But I'll go ahead and tell you, it's markw@aol.com. Yeah, I've had it since 1995, that far back. So it works for me because it's an easier one to navigate. That's the main reason. And therefore, it's better for my students to submit their papers, maybe both, if you want to do a backup, one PDF, and they all have to be PDFs. That's a given at the college, at least that's what we're all told. So everybody can open, whatever, when you get it back from graded, you'll also be able to open up the grading sheet and see how you did. Because sometimes even JPEGs aren't always accessible on everyone's computer. So it needs to be a PDF, your assignments mailed to me, and any extra credit, we're going to get to that in a few minutes, or maybe 15, 20 minutes. What are your options for extra credit? A lot of different options that some of you will actually raise your whole letter grade, your final grade, a whole letter. Then maybe you would have otherwise had if you did all the extra credit that you have as available. We'll get to all of that in a few minutes. Now, about roll. If I have a class of 39 students and I took roll at the beginning of each lecture, we'd never get through the material in this semester. We probably wouldn't get past ancient Greece or Rome. We're supposed to go all the way up through Gothic, late medieval art and architecture. So what that means is I'm going to take roll now. It looks like most people that are going to check in have already done that. I'll call your name. If I mispronounce it, correct me gently, and I'll remember to say it right the next time. But after the first two classes, I'm not going to continue to take roll. So how will I know if my students are still in the class? Also, how do I get to know more about your backgrounds? Because that's not an unimportant part of this type of a class. I just said I encourage people in all my classes, in person or online. I've taught at 9 different colleges, by the way, not just this JC, including San Francisco State and Sonoma State universities, in art history, same subject, basically with slight differences. And I found that the most interesting thing is the students having some background that brings to the class when they first enroll, even if you're just out of high school. And I might even have, I know a couple of advanced placement high school students. I've had some of my best grades from students like that. So I am going to ask you, and I'll send you an email to remind you to do, not now, but after this class tonight, or sometime, say this week at least, a mini bio, is what I call it. What is that? That's like half a page, max a full page. You should need to write more than that, about your background in 3 areas. Okay, I'm going to see if I can hold up 3 fingers. There we go. Not more or less. If you'll start by saying, where have you lived or traveled in your life? And even if it's, if it's just, well, I assume you've gotten out of the Bay Area, but even if it's only in California, that's relevant. So what is your experiences with traveling and living or moving even from other countries, other states? That's the first item. The second would be your work and educational experiences. if you've taken other classes or you even have a degree or you've had, don't give me your whole, it's not like a resume or a job application, just a brief summary in a few sentences of what kind of work you've done or if you're just now starting to work. My daughter's a barista at Pete's in Berkeley. If you ever get to Berkeley, go up Solano Avenue. That's my neighborhood. I'm coming to you from my house, by the way. I'm in the bedroom of my house in North Berkeley for these Zoom classes. Anyway, and she'll make you a heart or a leaf on her latte or whatever it is you ask her to do. Anyway, the point is, it doesn't matter what kind of work you've had. It's part of your life experience. So mention at least the major work and jobs experiences you had. And then the third thing is, what do you want to know or what do you want to learn in this class? Because we're covering, let's see, it's something over 500 years of art history. And that's a big task. We're going to go all the way. See, I said Gothic. I already misspoke. So nobody corrected me. I'm amazed. Yeah, it is our first day. And I am just now getting back, into the frame of mind of focusing on each class. It's been a hectic summer. We've had a bathroom torn apart and no power and no plumbing and no electricity for many days out of the last few weeks. So that's my excuse for saying the wrong things. Let me correct what I said a few minutes ago. We're covering, of course, and I said it correctly just now, the period from Renaissance, high, it's called, or mid-Renaissance in this class, all the way through modern art. So that means we're going from Da Vinci to Picasso to even, postmodern and, expressionist and other late movements of art. That's a lot of topics to cover in one semester. So I do not take roll after the second meeting. We'll do it again when I'll be up at Santa Rosa on the main campus because I teach on Wednesday in person. So I bring my laptop up there. And so that's a good incentive for you, I hope, is to write your mini bios before, say, the week or by the weekend. And then that lets me know you're definitely in the class. And a couple people have said they can't make it the first week. I totally understand that. So I'm not dropping those people. I've already made notes of that. If that's the case with anyone you know or yourselves, you don't have to tell me every time you can't make it to a class. But if you be gone for a week or so, you might want to. Not that I would drop you. The drops happen, we're required at the end of the third week, or actually the end of the second week. No shows are called. So if someone doesn't check in with me at all for 2 whole weeks, that means Monday, Wednesday, and then again the next Monday, Wednesday, and I don't hear from them, I will drop it. That's where required. Okay, any questions about the mini bio thing? Because that should just be a PDF sent to me at either markw@aol.com or mwilson@santarosa.edu. I'll send you an email as a brief reminder of what's included. I think it's pretty clear. And that helps me get to know you better. And also when you add that third thing about what do you want to learn from this class, I could emphasize a little more or a little less. I mean, I have a lot of slides that we'll never get to of my own. Okay, so let's see. Yes. Oh, thank you. That's a very good detail. That's very helpful for all you fellow students and of course for me and the readers. Yeah, please, when you put any extra credit, any questions you have, I know it might seem, well, so what? Well, I have 2 different classes. Now, the third one was canceled. First time that's happened to me in over a decade. Low enrollment, the art department. I'm not the only one. There was about half a dozen. Some of you may know that studio and lecture or history lecture classes that were canceled due to low enrollment. But the 2 I have are very large, and I don't want to confuse them like I did a month ago about us covering Gothic. My apologies on that one. I hope I got your attention. Anyway, yes, thank you very much. That is important. Always when you communicate with me, say which class you're in. I would start your email with that, or put in parentheses after your name. It's pretty easy. Right? You don't have to say more than Art 1.2. Right. Okay. So let's now, I have a list of topics, so I don't forget to cover those that we need to go over together. And we've covered the first 2, so we're in good shape so far. When it comes to the grading policies, we've had some changes. Some of you know this. I see a couple familiar names, so I'm guessing those are students, who have already heard that the requirements have been upgraded a bit in terms of the writing and the papers. We now are required, art history teachers at this JC, to have a minimum of 1,000 words. It's a reasonable minimum for college level research paper. I used to make it 500 or more, but very few people got an A who did only 500. That's 2 pages. Most A papers were 4 pages or occasionally 5. So 4 to 8 pages. This is all going to be sent to you as another PDF with the exact instructions, and we'll go over in class long before your first paper is due, which is 6 weeks. It's week 6, so you've got some time. But I don't want to wait till the 5th week to cover all the requirements. So we'll go over those together, and you'll have a PDF handout that you should have with you when you write your papers. Okay, so with that in mind, what I was trying to make sure you understand is that we also don't have the same number of tests that I used to give. I used to just give a midterm and a final, and they were equally weighted. But now we have to give 3 exams. So I figured out, with the help of one of my very astute readers, who has had other art history classes at other colleges, and suggested this idea. I've never done it before, that there'll be 2 midterms, but the second one will be an essay format. And it won't require you to have footnotes and a bibliography. Your first paper will. That's why we're going to go over that requirements for that paper. But then we'll do a traditional midterm. And if you took my classes before, or other teachers here who've done the same, it'll be familiar to you. But that'll be the first midterm. I think it's week 8 or 9. This is all in the syllabus, the deadlines, of course. And you'll always get emails from me regularly. Look in your inbox more than once a week for my announcements, reminders of deadlines. I think it's helpful when you're as busy as we all are with real life, maybe families, kids of your own, and or jobs and other classes. So I don't just let a deadline come and go and say, oh, you missed it. You get plenty of notice. But then if you do turn in assignments late, you can, I'll accept them, but you have points off. So that's best to avoid, if you can, turning anything in late. Anyway, so you have until 6 weeks for the first paper. And then there will be the first midterm, which is a traditional slide identification and short essay format, like I've used for years. And then there will be a second midterm, roughly 2/3 of the way through the semester. And that will be an essay format. It'll take a while to explain that second one because it's all new, but it's not going to be too difficult. You'll see what I mean. That's too far down the road to get into the details, but you'll have plenty of information on how that test will be given. None of my four components. Here we go. Now I'm holding up 4 fingers. 4 elements is what your grading is based on. Equally weighted. All 3 of the exams, including the new essay format, second midterm, and the first paper, are all worth 100 points. I think that's reasonable because I hated it at UC Berkeley. When I took art history courses, I took several there. Or any other classes, I was a history major. I got a BA in history. We used to say that and 50 cents will get you a ride on BART. Believe it or not, that was the price for a BART ride. Now it's what, $5. Anyway, the history degree I got wasn't too useful. So I have a master's now in it's called Fine and Applied Arts, which allows me to teach the college level courses that I have been teaching for over 25 years. But the point about the extra, the grading situation is if you have a bad test day, or hopefully you shouldn't do that with a paper, you have plenty of time to prepare, but what if you have one bad grade out of the 4, you can recover by either of course, first doing better on the remaining assignments and doing extra credit. I'll even demonstrate that after the first midterm, because some people don't do so well in their first test in any class, not just mine, and think they might want to give up or drop out. But I'll prove to you that you don't need to do that to recover in my classes. The final is not cumulative. It's not cumulative. Now, did you go back to the first week and have to study all that? No, just everything after the first midterm. And this is all going to be cleared from individual instructions I'll give you. Okay, so equally weighted, 100 points for each thing. And you should have, in fact, let's do this now. In fact, I should go ahead and take roll. I think someone might have. We're going to go over this in a couple minutes after I finish roll, which you should have in front of you, and also the syllabus, of course, each week, along with the list of terms to know. Those are the 3 documents. You don't need to refer to this much after the first couple of weeks, but it's helpful for us to over together. And then also, let's see, here we go. All right, one more. We're just about to roll, so it's good timing for whoever just joined. Let's see, is it? Let's see. Okay, so I'm going to call the names out as quickly and I hope accurately as possible. If I mispronounce them again, please correct me gently. Okay, Afra Ahmad.
Here.
You're here. Please say here. I prefer the verbal for this process. I'm just going to take roll twice, like I said, this class and the Wednesday, and then that's it. So one more time is Afra Ahmad, Ahmad here. No,
Here.
sorry.
Here.
Okay. You know, maybe your volume's a little low. You don't want to set it up too high, but I had trouble hearing you. Thank you. Okay, good. All right, moving along. Angelino Alcazar. I'll say him twice, each name. If I don't hear it the first time. One more time. Angelina Alcazar, not here. All right. Ty Brown.
Here.
Great, thank you. Colette Burham.
Here.
Thanks. Jared Casey.
Here.
Great. Lizzie, is it Chimal Macedonio?
Here.
Right? Or close.
Yeah.
The last part, Macedonia, that's actually closer than, this is part of Greece, the mainland of Greece, right? Which we're not covering in this class. It's R1.1. Delaney, DeGraves or DeGraves.
Here.
Delaney, good. Okay. How do you say that last name?
DeGraves.
Graves, okay. Okay, Marifer de Leon Hernandez. Not here? One more time. Okay. Christine DeWitt.
Here.
Thanks. Izzy Friedrich.
Here.
Thanks. Florence Gomes. Florence.
Here.
Good. Thanks. Okay. Adrian Gonzalez Romo. Adrian Gonzalez Romo, not here. Okay. Anthony Hogan.
Here.
Great. McKenna Hogio, is that right?
Yeah, here.
Okay. Did I pronounce the last name correct, or is it?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great, thanks. Maria Iberti.
Here.
Great. Okay, we're almost halfway through. You see why I would do this every class? It just takes too much time. Okay, Mo, and I think I have it Latrache or Latrache. It's hard, it sounds French, but anyway, Mo, Latrache, not here? No. Okay. Tanya Lewis. Tanya. I thought I saw that name here. Nope. Okay. Moon Lim.
Here.
Okay, yeah, that was so hard to hear. I almost didn't hear you. So yeah, you guys need to speak up if at least during the roll. And if you don't want to say a word for the rest of the semester, you don't have to. You still got an A. That's up to you. Gabby Mays.
Here.
Yeah, because I know you emailed me, right? Megan McCann.
Here.
Oh, great. Okay, Cara McHale.
Here.
Great. Eduardo Mendoza. Eduardo Mendoza. I didn't see that many absent.
Here.
Oh, good. Eduardo, you are here. Okay, good. Colton Miller, that's a familiar name.
Here.
Colton? Great. Good to hear you or see you again this semester. Okay, Emiliano Muro.
Here.
Good. Thank you. Canyon Nguyen.
Here.
Good. Okay, Aaron. Folks, I think I got that right. I got an email from you.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. Thank you very much. Kevin Pena Perez.
Here.
Kevin, sorry, I meant Kevin. Okay. Fabian Phillips. Oh, yeah, he told me he would be.
Here.
Oh, good. You're here then, because I know you said you might check in late. Brian Pollock.
Here.
I'm sure you're familiar. There's a very famous painter. We're going to cover him with the same.
Oh yeah,
A
absolutely.
great movie. It's kind of depressing, but it's an accurate movie with Ed Harris. Just feel like you're actually watching, because I've seen videos of him painting, and Ed Harris somehow learned how to paint that way. It's something I'll tell you why in a few minutes. Extra credit and option for watching that movie. So that's another way to earn extra points. Okay, let's finish up here. Alex Ruiz. Alex Ruiz. No. Okay, Sandy Ruiz. Nope, Sandy. No. All right. Claudia Saldana. It doesn't sound like there are that many absences, but before we finish, I will double check just in case somebody didn't speak up or didn't hear me ask their name before we move on to go over the class grading policies. Claudia, one more time, Saldana. No, okay. Josu Sanchez. Bejar.
I'm here.
Oh, thank you. Isabella Schneider.
Here.
Thanks. Olivia Smith.
Here.
Okay. Tamara Taubuld.
Here.
Tamara. Emily Taylor.
Here.
Great, almost done. Ethan Thompson.
Here.
Okay. And Jake Walton.
Here.
Okay, anybody not hear your name? I'm gonna do one last, just double check. This is all my papers. Which is just one last time for the people I didn't hear, or I assume either aren't here or just weren't able to hear me, or I couldn't hear them. Just make sure I don't accidentally mark someone absent. So those people were Angelino Alcazar, Marifer de Leon. So I thought I heard someone checking in, but I have to hear you say here. Nope, not here. Okay, Adrian Gonzalez. Well, still not. What? Yes? I'm sorry, I can't.
I'm here.
Yeah, thank you. That's helpful. So that's why. Okay, we're almost done. We got one more. Hang on. And this person now, that's Maria. Okay. Mo Latrache. Tanya Lewis. Should just take another minute. Nope. Alex Ruiz or Sandy Ruiz. Neither one here. And the last one would be Claudia Saldana. Now, I have a question before we resume or,
Hi,
yes? Emily.
sorry to interrupt. My name is Sandy Reese. I'm here. I'm just having a hard. with
Thank
my
you.
phone.
That's why I appreciate you doing that. That's for every, for anyone's situation. I know sometimes there, problems with audio perception. I have to grab the papers that fell on the floor. Anyway, so we're going to go over the grading policies again. If you just joined us in the last few minutes since we started roll, that's this sheet. You should have that in front of you while we do this. I'm not going to take too long, but it is important, obviously. I've already covered part of it. Oh, the textbooks. I have been diligent as possible about making sure that I thought both stores would have them by now, but a couple of people said they didn't see them in the main campus, Santa Rosa bookstore. I did get an email from the manager of the Petaluma store saying that they have copies for this class of both physical and ebooks of the first two books you need. So let's confirm what those are. And if you haven't gotten them, you should for sure before the end of this week. Of course, the other options. I don't think I have to spend too long talking about, Amazon used copies or eBay. Well, eBay is a little less of a direct route to go. But, these books can be much more expensive than they almost all are in print, of course. But now that you have ebooks and rental options, used books, there's enough way. Loose leaf editions. I always order the least expensive editions for the two main texts are Stockstead. You only need volume 2 for this class. You don't need volume 1 unless you want to take another art history class that covers ancient art. So just in this class, volume 2. And Sarah Gill's The Critic Sees. It's the most affordable for that kind of book, but unfortunately the new copies got up to $80 and it's paperback, but that's the publisher. She was the person who asked me to join this faculty. She called me up one day and said, I've been taking your walking tours and your architecture lectures all over the Bay Area. Why don't you join us on faculty? I said, what, to drive it to Santa Rosa from Berkeley several times a week? You crazy? Obviously, I made the decision that that's worth it. Sorry, let's see. I didn't see there wasn't any, or I thought for a second I saw some students' questions. Okay, so the other book, Sarah Gill's, is available in used copies. It's not, I don't think it has an ebook edition. I'm not sure the publisher has done that or not, but it's very helpful for you for writing your papers. The third book, you can wait a while, and it's not in yet in the Petaluma store or the main one, but it's the book I wrote on Julia Morgan, which we are going to cover. She's the first independent female architect in American history. That's pretty important, but also she did more buildings than Frank Lloyd Wright, and she got ignored after she died. but I was the second of a series of authors to write about her. There was a book about her many years ago that was a nice book. I own it and I knew the author. And then there was a lot of misinformation that happens, you know, it's true for every book at some point where new research verified new facts. And I learned about her life from knowing her goddaughter. So I wrote my own book, and that's the one that's the third book. And that you won't need till after the second midterm. Okay. And I'll hold these books up in a few minutes. All right, so that's it for the books. Hopefully you should be able to get, let's see. Okay, Tamara, wait a minute, do that again. Tamara, what was your last, because yeah, sorry, last name for Tamara, so I don't, I don't want to have to spend too long, but I don't want to identify. Let's see. Well, I think I got you here. Yeah, I think we don't have you. Yeah, all right, let's move on to the rest. I already covered the grading components, 4 elements of which are equally weighted, 100 points each, maximum of 400 points. And of course, to get, some of you may be taking the class, pass, not pass, you need 70% for a C. That would be 270 points out of the 400. I don't grade on the curve. This is all pretty straightforward, but we're just going down the list of things. The extra credit options, I want to take more time to explain. But, you know, it's just straight 90% and above is an A. 80 to 89 is a B, and so forth. You get the idea. Anything below 60% is an F. So that, I think it's self-explanatory, that part, the grading system. Attendance, this is how I feel about attendance. We're all adults. You guys are busy. You have lives. However, I can tell you, if you miss more than about, you know, 10 or 15% of the classes, you will have trouble. Let's see. Oh, I'm sorry, Marfa de Leon. Okay, let me just get that. Thank you. That's very important. Yeah. Yeah, now I've got you down there. Thanks. Okay, you're all set. All right, so back to what I was saying about attendance. I think it's important for you to be in class because that's when you, I think you said, I don't mute my students and you can ask questions. By the way, what are my office hours? Well, with Zoom, it's got to be, you know, on a laptop or you know, on a computer. So I stick around after class, or I can arrange specific times for each individual if that isn't an issue, a possibility, because the class will go to about 4:15, 4:20, the lecture. And then I'll stick around as long after that as need be each lecture to answer your questions. But maybe someone, you know, has a more, they don't want to discuss online or something with me about some question that's important. They can either come to Santa Rosa campus where I have an office. Well, all of us share our adjunct office. It's in Anley Hall. And I'm there several hours before and after I teach my classes, but you'd have to confirm that, not the day before, give me a couple days notice. And I can meet with you in my office if that's an option. And then the other is, you know, by phone or by email, or even perhaps an individualized online consultation. But that, hopefully that latter one isn't necessary, because that's a lot of effort for both the student and me to add to. I already figure sticking around after class for sometimes 20 minutes or more, answering your questions, or emails. Emails is a very logical way. I check my email at least 6 days a week. Okay, so hopefully that answers the questions that you might have about my office hours, which are, you know, kind of fluid. That's true, but if working after, I mean, sticking around, I'm sorry, after class doesn't work for you, then just contact me by email and we'll figure out something. Okay, extra credit. This is really important. You have so many options for extra credit. I have amended this, and I think some students have told me, at least over the years I've been doing, new options I've added in the last, since we became, you know, largely remote. Well, we were entirely remote, as you all recall, starting in March of 2020. It's almost 2.5 years. It was Friday the 13th. I remember that day, 2020, when I picked my daughter up from Albany High, where she was a junior, and she had a look on her face. I hadn't heard this announcement. It's going to be a long time before, if we ever go back to class. She never did. They never resumed classes at her high school. She graduated in 2021. So we're back to a blend, right? A mixed thing. So some of you, as you know, may be taking even in-person classes. But since we're on Zoom online, these options are, if anything, even easier for you to access. First, let's, you see at the bottom where it says extra credit, okay, of the first page, right? You can go to any art museum, by which I mean a museum that has a permanent collection of art, not an art gallery. That doesn't qualify. That's where they sell art, and the people working there may know diddly about the art. They're just trying to sell it. And like at a winery, there's nothing wrong with going to a winery and enjoying the pictures on the wall while you sip some wine or champagne, but that isn't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about an actual permanent collection of art, visual arts. That's what we're covering in this class. Obviously, there are multiple types of visual art. So let's briefly run down that list. It's obviously painting is included, drawing, photography, we're covering all of these, sculpture, and architecture. Those are the main ones. However, when it comes to writing your papers or extra credit options, what we're going to go over, you can write about any type of visual art from any period and any artist that you want to write about. I broadened that. I used to make it had to be something relating to the syllabus that we, not exactly what we covered, but the period. Now, why do that? It should be a work of art that interests you, motivates you to want to research and write more about it. So you can, for the extra credit option, you can go to an art museum that covers things that have nothing to do with what we're covering in this class. The Kinetic Art Museum, and I forget where it is. I think it's in Sonoma, somewhere in that area. I can't remember the name of it. I've never been there, but there's good art museums right downtown Santa Rosa. Has on 4th Street. Some of you know this, the Sonoma County Art Museum. And then there's in San Francisco, of course, all kinds of options. Well, how do you prove you went there and get the extra credit? You need to online, of course, so as a PDF or a screenshot, either one, that'll work, of the ticket that you got when you attended. It'll say the name of the museum, and you need to include your name in the class, of course, and the date you went there. So anytime during the semester, you can go to up to 2 different museums. So each category should keep to 2, because I want to broaden what you do if you choose to get extra credit. So you go to 2 different museums and get 20 points, 10 points for each time you verify attending an art museum. Okay, that's option number 1. Switching now over to the second page. An architectural site. This is one I've been doing for years because that's what my background is. And architectural history actually is what I wrote my thesis about, was Julia Morgan, the woman I just mentioned, and her unique career, which we're covering in the latter few weeks of this class. Okay, so go to an architecture site. For instance, why don't I go ahead and segue conveniently into my books that I've written. I have, since I'm asking you to do a mini bio, I figure this is directly relevant for me to give you what are my qualifications that give me the option to teach this, or the experience to teach this class. I always have trouble with the reflection issue. That's a little better. This is a church in Berkeley. We just had a walking tour in May at the end of the spring semester with a nice, considering it was, still the Omicron raging variant of was still raging. Decent turnout, about 18 people. We'll be doing a walking tour. That's another option for extra credit. I'll get to at the end. But you can go on your own with friends, whatever, to any architecture site that has any kind of history or, something. I mean, it should be a place that has some, not a Costco outlet, right? Or a big box store, but something with some architectural interest. And here's a good example. My book on Bernard Maybeck. He was the first green architect in America. The whole concept of green architecture is basically an idea he created without using that term, because that's a very late 20th century term where everybody who uses that term, I'm a green architect, or I want to, encourage a green design. It's great. But it goes back to the 1890s when he taught at UC Berkeley. He created the architecture program there. That's why I wrote this book. He's one of my mentors. I actually wrote my thesis on both him and Julia Morgan. She was his best student, and she ended up outdoing him with a number of buildings and the success in her career. But he did the Palace of Fine Arts, and you've all seen it on any rom-com. I know there's so many of those corny ones, or even some adventure/suspense movies like The Rock with, anyway, the point is there's all kinds of movies that are filmed in San Francisco which use this setting, and it's open, it's free. You don't have to pay to walk around and take 4 photos. That's a requirement to get the 10 points for an architecture site visit. And then you need to write where it is, the city, the name of the site, and again, your name in the class. and produce 4 color, please, color photos. And I don't want, well, I can't look them on your phone. That's for the in-person people. I tell them, don't bring your phone up to the front of the room and let me try it. You have to send them to me as a, again, PDF is best, right? For images especially. So 4 photos of details of full view of the building and whatever else, interior, exterior shots. There's worth 10 points for each of those, okay? Continuing with option number 3. You can email me articles for, in this case, which would be 20 points in this category, about art, the visual arts. Now I'm going to include in that, I didn't quite finish the list, crafts, which even though we don't cover, because we just don't have time for that in this class, quilts, that's an art form. I had a student get an A on one of the best papers I've ever read in a class about 5 years ago. It was about a Swiss watch that was from the 1920s or very early, and it was a work of art in his mind because it was beautifully designed and uniquely made, custom made for some wealthy Swiss banker or something. But the point is, it was in a museum. It doesn't have to be from a museum to qualify. I had another student write about In-N-Out Burger, the place, not the sandwich. That may be a work of art to some people, but the buildings as architecture. And I thought, oh, this is going to be a bust. This paper, it was a beautiful paper. It got an A+ because she did her research about who the original architect was that designed it, why they used the colors. So you can write about any visual work of art. And as I already said, ceramics is another category you can write about, and crafts, anything made by hand can be artistic. Of course, if it's mass produced, probably shouldn't write about something like that. But something that's uniquely created by a craftsperson or an artist, any in the visual arts qualifies for your choice of papers. Or for this option, number 3, to email me a PDF of an article that has to be at least a full page. Don't give me just, a paragraph. It should be a reasonable length article, more like 2-3 pages. Doesn't have to have an image, but it's helpful if it does, of the topic. It could be about an artist, local or national or internationally famous. Or it could be about a trend in art, like, the auctions and how crazy prices have gotten. Everyone knows that for certain artists, right? Or anything else about a new Van Gogh. Well, that's not going to happen. But there was a new Da Vinci just discovered about a year ago. I think so, Anyway, the point is that it's a broad, open-ended thing, but it has to have to do with visual arts from any period. And you can send me up to 4 of those, 5 points for each time you send me one. And there's your 20 points in that category. Okay, this is a new one. Watching a feature film or a documentary, at least 60 minutes long, about the life of an artist. There's so many good ones. And I just rediscovered one that I've forgotten about called Surviving Picasso, because I'm reading a great biography of him. I'll share that with you later. We want to keep moving here to get through the introductory comments. We're going to get slides next class on Wednesday, and you will need to take notes, but we won't do that today. We're just doing the overview. Okay, so a film, there's, oh my goodness. Of course, Frida Kahlo with Salma Hayek. She should have gotten the Academy Award for that role. She really inhabited the life of that artist, that rather difficult, if not tortured life that, she led. And of course, it was filmed on location by someone from Mexico. It was a brilliant movie. That's one example. Another is Lust for Life. It was done in the 50s. And some might say, oh, forget it. I won't watch a movie that old. It doesn't matter. When you start watching it, it pulls you in. And of all things, Kirk Douglas played Van Gogh. And you forget you're watching Kirk Douglas when he ran around as Spartacus, with no top on, as a Roman slave. Totally different performance. It's superb. He was nominated for the Academy Award. He should have gotten it for Best Actor. It's called Lust for Life, and it's about. Sorry, I didn't see that because was there a question I need to answer? Because I was focusing on finishing that point. There's so many choices. You can find something much more recent, I'm sure. I would avoid the Moulin Rouge from 2000 something with Nicole Kidman. Not that she's not a great actor, but there's nothing in that that's accurate about the life of Toulouse-Lautrec. However, there is another movie with the same title that won every Academy Award it was nominated for, and it'll make you cry unless you have no empathy what he went through. He wasn't even, well, let's not go into what, we'll get to it. We're covering it. We're covering Lautrec, one of my favorite artists. That movie's called Lust for Life, and it's from the 50s. And the actor who played it, again, you forget you're watching an actor who's 6'5" tall or something like that. You really believe you're watching the actual 4'10" high man named Toulouse-Lautrec. So there's so many options, and documentaries are all over the place. It's 60 minutes or more, and then write 2 pages about what you learned from that documentary, about that artist and their life and their work. That should be a fun one. So that's worth 10 points. Attending a walking tour or an architectural event. I don't know if I'll get any lectures going. I've applied to do some. I used to do them every semester, and students could just show up, and sometimes they got in for free. Sometimes it was small. For heritage groups, architectural heritage groups are all over there. In a building, usually in one of my books, that's what I would usually do those lectures at a place that I had already written about. But that may be not as feasible. But a walking tour, I can tell you I'm going to do, unless knock on my wooden table I put my laptop on top of. Let's hope that there's not some new variant that just drives us all underground again. So barring that, I'll be doing a walking tour in Berkeley, and it's 20 points for attending. You don't have to write anything. You do have to check in with, I'll hire one of my teaching assistants to take names and write down which class you're in. And there's a modest fee, but it's fun. It's going inside buildings that aren't open to the public in Berkeley in a historic neighborhood. Okay, so that option is worth 20. And then the last one here I've done for about 2.5, now 3 years. I want everyone to know this. This has been vetted, you know that word, everyone, thoroughly by the academic senate, by the art department chair at that time, and the vice president of our college of Santa Rosa JC. So it is not something you have to even think about. If you're not interested in, you can ignore it, but it is an easy option, and that is downloading, and you don't have to prove you read them, but hopefully you would read at least some, either of the 2 art themed novels that I have written over the years, which I wrote with professional input from established writers groups that I belong to. One of them is called South Side Story, and it's about Chicago in the early 60s. That's where I grew up. South side of Chicago is pretty interesting, if not colorful, even some would say tough neighborhood. And growing up there, when the Black Muslims were just getting, really going, and Martin Luther King was coming by to lecture, Obama was in Hawaii then, but that's the neighborhood he moved to, some of you know this, where his presidential library is going. And it was all kinds of historical events happening there in the early civil rights movement. My mother volunteered for the Freedom Riders. If you don't know what that is, if you haven't taken American history of the 20th century, pretty risky. People were getting killed, firebombed the buses in the South in the early 60s. So that novel might be of interest to you for that reason alone, but it's worth 15 points if you download it. Yeah. Okay. So at this point, that's one of the easier options. Now, if you write a review, and you can write whatever, there's no, obviously it's got to be your honest opinion. Amazon will post it and it'll be obvious, and then you get an extra 10 points. So you could get up to 50 points by doing both of those novels. And the second one is called, this one sounded like, how could it be art related? I'll explain. The Open House Murders, set in San Francisco in the early 90s, pre-internet, when I was, yes, a full-time realtor, and I was only teaching 1 or 2 classes in the evening. And Sarah Gill, I just told you, she was my mentor and the person who asked me, she was department chair when she asked me to interview for this position. And at that point, there was some craziness. Eldridge Cleaver, some of you know who he was, wrote Soul on Ice, was a client in our office. A dead body showed up in one of our, not mine, but one of my fellow agents' open houses. So it got me thinking about what would happen if a real estate agent found a body of a former client, dead body, in the basement of one of his listings, and everything goes downhill for him after that because he's being framed. It's a fun read. I've been told that these all have reviews. You can check for yourself on Amazon Kindle. I should have said that. That's where they're available. And if, of course, you have Amazon Unlimited, it's free. If not, it's like $3.99 or something. And if you write a review, of course, then that's, your way of saying what you thought. The reviews that were already is like 60 of them on, I think, the South Side Story, and 50 on the Open House Murders. Anyway, you're using my name and those titles, and it's right here in front of you, of course, as the last option. it's pretty easy to access them. Okay, so that's all the extra credit options. Any questions before we talk about the lecture techniques of how to take notes? So you'll be ready for that on Wednesday. Any questions about anything we've covered? Okay, because I'll stick around at the end, of course. All right, I don't need to go over the student conduct because we're online. I mean, if someone's got a barking dog or a very noisy family member in the background, I'll ask them to mute, but I rarely need to do that. There's no courtesy issues usually online. Boy, again, I should knock on wood. I know when we first had these Zoom classes, I was not yet up to speed, but I heard other teachers tell me they had interference from, some of you, right? Some nude, what's the word? Hackers, I guess is the word, right? That interrupted their lectures. It's such a more thoroughly security-based system now. I like Zoom. It's a really great invention. And if I can do it, anybody can do it, right? So I don't even own a smartphone, but my daughter does. So that's it's just I can, and my wife, so we can communicate with each other. So the point is that having this system here doesn't, this method of teaching and learning and, communicating between student and teacher pretty much precludes any kind of rude behavior, but that's, each person can make. I don't mind. Here's the important point. In fact, not only do I not mind, I actually encourage students, if they don't agree with something I said, that doesn't happen very often because pretty much it's documented and well researched what I tell you in class about each artist. But there are times when someone will have a different interpretation or new information, just additional facts. Please don't hesitate if that's something on your mind. You can bring that up, and it benefits all of us, because I can learn from that as much as the other students. Okay. Let's see. You're not asking me if I can hear you, right? Or are you? Because I haven't heard too many people speak up. I'm going to encourage you on any given slide. You don't have to say a word, like I said, to get an A. You could just keep yourself muted the whole semester. That's fine. And just chat or wait and email me after class. But if you feel like participating, it's better to do it verbally. It's more rapidly accessible for me to respond more quickly. But you can do it this way too, of course, with the chat. All right, late policy is the last thing, and then we'll switch to going just briefly over what the class is going to cover. The scheme of it isn't quite, I guess you should say scope. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for. The scope of what we're going to cover. Okay, late policy, I'm pretty flexible. I've been told I'm too flexible by other teachers, and even a couple of my students. I accept late work, even if it's more than a week late, but I take 10 points off if it's a whole week late, or 5 points off if it's under 7 days late. Now, what happens if you have family emergency? People do, of course, life happens, or illness. Obviously, that's going to happen. I'm knocking on wood, I don't get COVID. I've avoided it so far, but an in-person class with 43 students, I'm going to do everything I can to avoid it. And if that happens, it won't affect you guys because I'll just give my lectures online, but my in-person students, I'll have to watch one of these Zoom lectures for that week. If I have to isolate. But if you get sick, all you have, there's not my requirement, this is the district requirement, which is that you provide written evidence of your illness, such as I hate to say COVID test, but whatever kind of, a doctor's visit or a prescription of some kind for, medication you need to take. The other category is family emergency. And for that, there has to be something more than a note from your mom. I'm being corny here, of course, or from yourself saying, well, if you had to go to the airport to pick someone up, there should be a way to prove that, family, or an emergency that happened to someone in your family. There should be some evidence. That's not my rule. That's the district. If you have any written evidence, send it to me as a PDF or a screenshot of having not physically been able to get that work turned in by the deadline that week. It has to be within that week that you show you were incapacitated somehow, either by health or family emergency, and you provide proof of it in writing. You get an extra week's extension before the late points are taken off. That's not my rule. It's the district rule. So I think that's pretty straightforward. So what happens if you don't get either the first paper or the second essay format midterm done on time? you could get backlogged. I recommend against this. You could still turn that first paper in as late as a week before finals, but not a good idea. It does almost always leads to lower grades because you're backlogging yourself or putting yourself into a corner is the phrase, backing yourself into a corner, because obviously you've got most people have other classes, you've got whatever job situations. And usually people, when they're rushing at the end of the semester, don't do a good job. So I recommend you don't let yourself get more than a couple weeks beyond the deadline for any assignment. And the two tests are given in real time. The two main ones, the first midterm and the final. So you have to be in class for that. I don't post them on YouTube, but you'll have till midnight of the day of the test to finish answers and double check you correct, spell it where, whatever facts in the midterm, the first midterm and the final exam. But those you do need to attend for. Again, if something comes up and you can't, then I'll figure out an alternative, but it has to be written evidence that you were physically unable to attend that week's class or that night's class. I think that's pretty clear. Any questions about any of the things on this? We just covered this 2-page grading policies. Okay. All right. And then, by the way, anybody here who checked in after I took roll? Anybody? Because I think we had one person. I believe they caught them. Okay, so here's the Bible. You call it what you want, but it's the template for the entire semester. And it's been revised. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you how this has been revised. This was done during the last year and a half by a committee within the art department of tenured faculty. Since I'm not tenured, I didn't have anything to do with it, but I understand it, and it makes sense to increase the minimum requirement for your research papers from 500 to 1,000, which is quite reasonable. And then, of course, also that we need to mention a few elements of composition. We won't get to that until, let's see, well, next week we're going to cover that. I'm going to have a whiteboard that I drew. It's in the corner of my room, right as we're sitting here, and I'll have it posted. I'm going to turn the laptop screen around 180 degrees so it's facing the wall behind me, which you can't see because that's the wall with my Chicago 1933 World's Fair poster on it. Anyway, the point is that you'll see what I mean. It'll be easy to understand if you attend that lecture and you really want to make sure you're there live, because that's when you can ask questions about, what is modeling and what different techniques do artists use for space. We'll cover all of that. There'll be a handout. You'll get that by this weekend, and you'll want to have that with you when you write your papers about what each of these elements are. But we've added a couple new ones to the list that this committee came up with. So now there's 10 items or 10 types of techniques artists can use that you'll need to write about in your papers and the second midterm. We'll go over how to do that in detail. Like I said, that'll be for the how to write your papers. We'll do that the third week. And each week we're going to have new slides, and you see week by week, it's pretty clear what we're covering each of these weeks as we come up. So for instance, on Wednesday, we are going to look at 4 slides from Michelangelo to Frank Lloyd Wright. And those are all topics that we're going to cover later on. But we aren't covering early Renaissance. I want to say that's a change that I didn't actually agree with. So is there anybody listening? Let's see. I'm breaking one rule right up front. I'm telling you. Now this is going on YouTube, so I hope this is going to be in trouble. We're not supposed to cover anything before 1500. But guess what? Some of you know this. Da Vinci started his career in the late 1400s. His best work was between the 1490s and the 1510s. So that's arbitrary to say, well, we can show only the work Da Vinci did after 1500. No, we're going to look at The Last Supper, and it's a really interesting painting. A lot of people don't realize how controversial it is. Not just, because it's on the wall of garages in felt, badly done versions of it for, or people like dogs sitting at a table playing cards in the same configuration as the people on that painting. And we're going to cover that painting, even though it's before 1500. So I guess I'm breaking a rule there, but we're going to cover Da Vinci as a cohesive career of his work chronologically. Other than that, though, it is true. We're going to stick to everything in this class that you need to take notes on, that I lecture, and that you could be tested on. Will be from 1500 to about 2000 roughly. I'm not going to show much from after that, but we'll go all the way up to the turn of this century. So you can see, I don't think I have to go over, which topics we are, but we are going to cover more about 20th century painting than we used to. And that's a change I'm very happy to see that came about with this committee, that there's more time because we don't cover the 1400s, the early Renaissance, more time for 20th century painting and architecture. Architecture is my forte, and then I'll give you another option for extra credit, and then I'll take any questions, and we might just do it a little early. I write fairly regularly for this magazine. It's a pleasure because they have an editor who likes art and art history and architecture, luckily. And I've done, let's see, 3 articles for her. And just next month, it'll be out before the end of August. It'll be the September issue. My next article will be on Julia Morgan's legacy in the North Bay. What buildings not only physically are still around that she designed, like the Sausalito Women's Club. Boy, if you ever get to go there, you'll understand why she was one of the greatest American architects. It's just stunningly beautiful. It's in, of course, Sausalito. Anyway, that's in my book. But in this case, the articles I write for Marin Magazine are an extra credit option. That's why I'm showing it to you, as well as some background, since I'm asking you to write a mini bio. This was fun. I did this on 6 of the oldest commercial buildings or businesses along 4th Street, that many of you know pretty well. That's a neat old town, kind of like old California. They preserve so much of their history in downtown San Rafael. So for instance, look at this picture that came from the archives that I was able to research. This one here, whoops. These are nurses in 1919, with the pandemic that happened 100 years before our current one, marching down 4th Street with their masks on. Okay, so articles from any magazine about art, I said already qualify you for 5 points. So if you send me a link to one of my existing articles, it's easy to look those up. Just look up on Google, Marin Magazine. I think it would be, or if not, then it'll give you the prompt how to do that. And another one is something we are going to cover in this class. The Miwok and Pomo legacy. Let me see, I always have to do it. There we go. Of Chief Marin. Chief Marin is someone who, of course, was misnamed by the Spanish colonial missionaries, right? His real name was Quicpus. I learned that from the woman who runs the Museum of American Indian. It's a wonderful museum in Novato. And so I covered all the sites in the North Bay that relate to the indigenous culture that, of course, we're now much more likely to have a knowledge of or awareness of and respect for and all those things. And of course, we didn't for a long time. So it was a really interesting experience to write this article. And then the Julia Morgan piece will be out in the September issue. Now, if you get me a hard copy of that, you wouldn't probably find the back issues. Hard copies are gone. That's worth 10 points if you can get it to me by mail. But of course, that's a difficult thing for you to do because we're online. But 5 points is pretty easy. If you send me a link, and then you do need to identify yourself. Maybe 1 sentence tops 2 about what you thought of the article, but you'll have to review it or write any kind of details about what you learned. Okay, so the only other thing I'll mention is another option for extra credit back on architecture, and then I'll take any questions you may have. And that's the Marin County Civic Center. This is the book I've had the most sales. It's in its 3rd printing. It's Frank Lloyd Wright on the West Coast. That house has been in several movies. It's in Carmel. Some of you may know it. See, if you happen to go down that way towards the Monterey County area, I love going down with my family every Christmas break. We stay 2 or 3 nights. It's wonderful to walk along the water and look at the seals and what have you. It's usually good weather in December, right? But you don't have to go that far to find a Frank Lloyd Wright landmark, and that's open to the public, and you can take the photos easily of it. And that's the Marin County Civic Center, which, as you may know, is right along 101. And that was in the movie Gattaca with Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman. Pretty interesting movie. And I believe it was, it was George Lucas that had something to do. Oh, no, he filmed another movie in there. Michael Jackson did a music video at that site. So this book is about all of the West Coast sites. And it's available, as are the other 2 I did, the one on Julia Morgan and the one on Maybeck. Copies of whoa, do I drop at least one book? And it's heavy, as you can tell from the nothing. are available on reserve in the 2 libraries. I double check. So you could even choose to write a paper. If you choose to write a paper on architecture as one of your 3 sources, we'll talk about what to do with how to research and how to write your papers in about 3 weeks. Well, the 3rd week of class, actually. They're not due to the week, 6th week, right? Is your first assignment is a 4 to 8 page paper on any visual work of art you choose to write about. Covered a lot, and we still have a few minutes before we normally would end around 4:15, because of course we don't do breaks. It doesn't really pan out that way for an online class. It's twice a week, right? So because I'm supposed to lecture 2.5 hours out of each 3-hour class, weekly lecture, I usually end around 4:15. We'll go to 4:20 a couple of times though, but I'll try not to push it to 4:30. Well, we covered it quite a bit, and those are the main topics, but I don't want you to forget about and I'll send an email to remind you. I might even do it tomorrow, but it'll probably be Thursdays, because you're going to take your time between now and, let's say, the end of the weekend would be good, before Sunday night. A mini bio. I already mentioned what that is. Was anybody that wasn't here when I mentioned what that is? And an email I'll summarize. If anybody need me to recap what I'm asking you to do? Yes?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Something was wrong with my speaker all this time, my earphones all this
Oh, I've had, yeah. So did you want me to restate what?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's 3
please.
things, and don't spend more than a whole page. In fact, a half page is enough, but somewhere in that range.
Okay.
About first 3 items, about obviously your name and the class you're in, right? And should be a PDF, so I can definitely open it. And that would be first about your travel and or where you've lived or traveled outside the Bay Area.
Mhm.
And that should be just a few lines, but some of you, travel quite extensively, but even if it's only in other parts of the West Coast, you go ahead and do that as the first of the 3 items. The second one would be your work and educational experiences. What kinds of classes beyond high school, of course. Well, if you're a high school student, then fine, just mention that. And whether you have any degrees or certificates. And not every job you've had, but just the 2 or 3 most important ones are your current work status and type of work that you've done. You don't have to say where, unless you want to. And the third thing is the most helpful for me is, what do you want to learn within this class, the parameter? Obviously, we're not going to cover ancient Egyptian art. Speaking of that, I hope you'll all be interested to go see the Egyptian exhibit, even though it's not the period we're covering. It's called The Pharaoh's Gold. Anybody? Did anybody at the De Young? It begins August 20th. Did anybody here try to see the King Tut exhibit?
I did.
Oh, what a come on!
Fabulous.
Yeah. Well, it was good, but they misrepresent. I had students complain about it. I said, hey, I had no control over it. I've seen the original pieces in Egypt, and they're fabulous, but they don't ever let them out of Egypt anymore.
That's true. That is true.
Yeah, his coffin, his funerary masks, right?
Yeah, they
his
were
mummy,
messy.
and almost all of his personal major items, like his throne and his chariot, were in his tomb. Boy, I'll never forget the day I got to go inside his tomb. Even though all that's in a museum in Cairo, 350 miles away in Luxor on the southern edges of Egypt down the Nile, is a whole different experience. A lot of tourists, American tourists, never get that far, but I spent 3 weeks in Egypt. I loved it. I got sick as a dog. I got Pharaoh's revenge. They call it Pharaoh's revenge. Ramses revenge, we call it. From drinking water from the Nile somewhere. But it's worth going to this one, whatever your experience was with that Pharaoh of the earlier exhibit, which was misleading to put. They showed his mask on. Remember, some of you in San Francisco along the Presidio Parkway, where you get to the museum from the Golden Gate Bridge, you have to go that way. And look, it's gonna. My students are saying we got there. What? There was none of that. It was a good exhibit. I'm not saying it wasn't worth going to. This one is much more upfront about what it does include. It's all kind of from Ramses, who was one of the most. He was the longest ruling pharaoh. And he's the one that the movie, The 10 Commandments, a few of you may have seen it. It's so old now. I know many of you.
You mean the Hollywood version?
Yeah, that. It's kind of corny. Yeah. With Yul Brynner, who is Russian. My daughter is, by the way, Russian, adopted from Russia. So she used to like to watch it, but now she says, oh, it's so corny, I can't sit through it. A Russian playing an Egyptian pharaoh, whatever. Anyway, that was in the 50s, of course. But it's good special effects. But the point is that this is the true legacy of what's left of much of his most valuable possessions in a pretty important period in world history and a pretty important person. So yeah, that's another option for 10 points.
I'm going to see that.
Yeah, and then you just bring, or not bring, right? We're online. You just send me a PDF proving that the ticket, there. Now, if you're a member, it might be free. I'm a member, but I think there's still a separate fee. Anyway, there's a way you're going to get some kind of documentation of the day and the name of the exhibit in the museum and your name and your class. And I recommend that. That's a really great one.
I think they'll print something out for you.
Yeah, so you have plenty of options now for extra credit, I think. And is everybody pretty clear now on that mini bio? You'll get another, at least, well, one more email sometime late this week as a reminder of what that is. And you can probably do it in a few minutes, but if you want to take your time, get some thought, you don't have to get poetic or anything.
Can someone
Literarily.
go to the Asian Art Museum?
Oh, the Asian Art Museum. I love that. I just went with one of my former students who wrote all her papers on ancient Egypt, and the person at the museum that I actually had already met before. That's one of my favorite museums. It's
Me
right across
too.
from City Hall in San Francisco, and if you
Mhm.
drive, you can park within sight of it. That's the neat thing, in a city-owned garage, very reasonable hourly rates, and your car is safe because it's in a city garage with people all around, so you don't have to worry about break-ins, but still don't leave anything in any parking site setting invisible, accessible, visible, I should say, out in plain sight in many parts of the world, for that matter, but especially San Francisco at the moment. But it's a great museum. Yeah, just the perma collection is worth going, but there's all kinds of interesting new exhibits there on gender fluidity and Asian art, for instance, is one of the new ones. So that's a good 10-point option too. So you got plenty of things that you have now, hopefully already from just this first session, that hopefully get you interested, if not excited, at least motivated to think about extra credit options, about it's a little early to think about what you want to write about for your paper, but if you're interested, you can start doing some of the preliminary research, but we'll go over in detail how to do this. So the next class will be slide lecture, the whole class. You will need to have the notes in front of you. You take them however you want. If you want to record them, they discourage that, but since I'm recording this anyway, and it's going to go out onto YouTube, I don't see an issue with it, as long as you don't try to sell it to somebody. I don't know what the JC has some legal issue with that. As long as it's just for your own use, students' use. You can record however you want, but you probably should take notes, because that's what you use to study when it comes time to review for the midterms. So that'll be 4 slides we're covering in the next class, and I'll tell you all about how to take the notes at a very easy, simple, quick overview of how effectively to keep the notes, or to take and then review them later for the exams. And you'll see what I mean. It's not too cumbersome, but it'll take a few minutes. So log in on time, if you please, if you can, because we'll get to the first slide within maybe 10 minutes. I'll probably take roll one more time. So hopefully you'll all be here at the start of class. But I'll usually admit all, it's called, right, about 3:02 or 3:03 each day, just to give people that just barely are getting online at 3. Okay, any questions now? I'll stick around because we're done with the day's first lecture.
I need to ask you if you have received my accommodations. I'm Tom.
yeah.
Hayes.
Yeah, I think I even wrote it down. Yeah, so you're going to have time and a half, anyone who does.
And I'm going to have a note taker.
Oh, yeah. Now, that doing it online, I've never actually had that situation. So do you need to have me ask for someone to do that, and then you would get it?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you remind me? That's very important, obviously,
Okay.
at the start of the next class. I have written down that because of course I was notified by the JC for each. I mean, there's more than one in each of my classes, but the specific online note-taking process is, believe it or not, in the 2+ years we've been doing Zoom classes, or at least that I haven't yet had that come up, but it's obviously not difficult to do if we just, get someone willing to do that. Now, I don't see the problem with it being directly, right? Is that how you'd want it sent to you? To your, you can communicate with them by this chat or even directly.
Yeah, just print it out, just simple, just print it out.
Yeah,
Notes printed out.
it should work that way. And then as a PDF that you can open when you
Yes,
get it by email.
that
right?
would be the best, yes.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Just remind me at the start of the class, so.
Okay, on
before the
Thursday?
first-
Or
Yeah,
on Wednesday?
on Wednesday.
Wednesday?
At 3:03. By the time I
Okay.
finish with roll, I will, if you have, don't forget I'll say now we're about to start the slides. I have so much on my mind, I might temporarily forget, but I will then stop and make sure we get someone. Shouldn't be too difficult to do that,
Okay,
to help out. Yeah, all right. Any other questions? Because now these are my unofficial office hours.
Is it gonna be the same meeting ID every single time?
Oh, no, it changes. And I should be able to send you the direct link.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you a confession. It's been 3 months since I've done Zoom. I got decent at it, is what my daughter calls it. Competent, barely, but sufficiently so that I didn't have too many glitches, except when the weather, you remember those atmospheric storms we had? Sometimes that would just interfere with the connection, and then we'd have to just cancel that class. But that hopefully might happen in December, but let's hope not. At least
Okay.
not enough to make the class, have to, be voided for that night. But assume every night you'll be able to, or every afternoon, I meant, I keep saying night, be able to log on and you'll see a link. And that's even faster for me both to send to you, because otherwise, if I mistranscribe the numbers, which I did maybe twice in the last year, the students can't get in. And I said, why is no one signed in by 2:58? I don't think that'll happen this semester. You'll
I
be
had
getting a
trouble.
link. You'll get a link.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? It's the right time now.
Is there a book for this class? I think I
Oh,
emailed-
yeah, I was covering that at the beginning. They're at the top of the grading list, which is
Okay.
Stockstead. I'll go ahead and repeat it, but they're in that handout that you should have with
Okay.
you, right?
Got
Stockstead
it.
volume 2 only. You don't need, and you get loose leaf or used, whatever's cheapest. And
Okay.
then Sarah Gill, again, used copies of hers are quite reasonable. The critic sees. Later on, you'll need the Julie Morgan book, the one I wrote, which I didn't actually hold up. I meant to.
Wait, repeat that again,
I
please.
meant to. This
Oh,
book will be
yeah.
after the midterm.
Julie Morgan.
You won't need this book until after the second midterm, because we're covering 20th century architecture, and she was such an. If you've ever been to Hearst Castle, maybe at least some of you have, right? Hearst Castle, she designed that, and she didn't even get credit when Life magazine ran a whole feature article right after she died. Didn't mention her name. Gee, I
That's
wonder what
terrible.
why would that happen? It's called sexism, obviously. So my thesis advisor, I want to mention this, got angry enough when he was already a professor at UC Berkeley, when I was just a little kid then, to write an angry letter to Life magazine and excoriate them for not mentioning the name of and why she was such an important woman. So I admired him for that. And then I took his graduate thesis seminar, and he was my thesis advisor to write a research paper about Julie Morgan. That was what my thesis was. Yeah, he won the Pulitzer Prize. His name was Alan Temko. So I used him as a reference in my book on her, among other. But that book will come up after the second midterm when we get to 20th century architecture. Then you will need to read a few chapters. But right now, it's just Stockstead, volume 2, and Sarah Gill's The Critic Sees.
Sarah Gills.
Gills. Yeah, this is on. Do you have the handout? It's at the top.
Not right in front of me, but I do have them.
The grade, yeah, well, have those with you each,
Okay.
everyone should do this. I'm not just saying it to
Okay,
any one
got it.
person. Should have, the 3 things should have with you are the grading policies, though after the first 2 or 3 weeks, you'll get the hang of that. But always you should have the syllabus, of course,
Mhm.
and that will tell you what slides are coming up, of course, and what to read. And the other thing is the list of terms, which we're going to go over together, and I will describe how to do very briefly. We're talking about 1 or 2 line definitions, and I wrote them in on some of them. I wrote in for you, but there are some where you'll have to actually fill in the blanks, and that's this handout that I actually didn't mention because I'm going to talk about it on on Wednesday. But I'll hold it up for those who are still here.
Oh, I saw that. Yeah, I have those.
Yeah,
printed.
so I have that with you, each lecture and the syllabus. And then maybe the course grading policies for the first couple of weeks or so, in case you have questions, okay? Yeah, next to your laptop. Whatever device you're logging in on. Okay, any other questions before we call it a day? And thank you all for your input and your participation. I look forward to seeing you, hopefully by 3:03 or so on Wednesday. All right. One last time, any other questions? All right, and of course, I check my emails if you have questions that occur to you before.
Can we, I just went to Legion of Honor and I saw the Chinese fashion designer. I don't know how to pronounce her.
Oh, yeah.
exhibit. I saw that. That was fabulous.
Well, it does have to be during this semester. That's a requirement of.
They've extended it.
Yeah, sorry, say
They
again.
have extended it because the exhibit behind it was held up.
Oh, well,
They've extended
no,
it.
I meant your attendance needs to be from today through the end of finals. That's the requirement. Otherwise, people could show me something from 2 or 3 years ago, or months.
No,
ago.
it's current.
Yeah, no, you're not hearing me. You need to attend a museum for that option of extra credit when this class has started
Okay.
through the last day of class. So you've got a lot of options there. So you know what you could do though? You could get 5 points for writing something brief about what you learned. I can adjust it that way because then you at least get some credit. But if you went to the museum before the class started, that's not part of this semester requirement. You
Okay.
see what I'm saying?
Okay.
I know it sounds arbitrary, but
I'm
that's-
gonna go see it again anyway.
That'd be perfect. Oh, that'd be ideal. And then you don't have to write about it unless you want to. You can just show me the ticket. No, that's ideal. Then you get your 10 points. And of course, you could do another museum, maybe the Egyptian is.
Have you seen the Obama paintings?
Yes, I did. I did when I went. Yeah, they're really impressive. Yeah.
They said
Yeah,
that
there's
I should
another,
be a
they're going to
donor.
be there for a long time, aren't they? Well,
Uh-huh.
actually, they might leave in November. I know. So, but they're still there now. Yeah. I know the De Young is an interesting place because it's got world art, which is what we're covering from all the continents, and not a lot of older art museums do. The more and more these days they are.
I think they're beautiful.
Okay,
Just in the
well, there you
shadow.
go. You already got a couple of ways you can earn extra credit for up to 20 points for 2 different museum visits during the semester. Okay, any other questions?
You're
about it?
gonna send us the instructions for that for the
Yeah, I
introduction
will.
thing, right?
Yeah, the
Okay.
mini bio, I call it. Yeah, and that'll be by, probably Thursday afternoon or evening. Yeah. So you have plenty of time. I mean, as long as I get it before the end of next week.
All right.
Hopefully sooner. Yeah. It shouldn't take you more than a few minutes. All right, now half a page, max a page. Yeah. All right. One more time, because I think we still have several more people that may have questions. Anybody else? Okay, I'll probably do the speaker thing for each student that has, but actually, you know what, that's your call. If you don't want to be on the screen, you know how to avoid that, right? I don't have to explain that, right? Because I didn't learn that until the second semester of Zoom teaching. But if you want to, it's helpful for me to match faces and names, but you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can just remain totally anonymous and still get named. Okay, one more time. Anybody
Oh, excuse me.
with any questions about anything we've covered? All right, I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday. I'll take roll one time and then we'll take care of that request or need with the note taker. Right, and then go right on into just the first slides, which are on your syllabus. So you should do the reading, the first 2 chapters of Stockstead. Or actually, it's the first chapter. It's on your syllabus. Okay, so I'll see you guys all on Wednesday about 3:03.
Thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.